Now, although this works, that's totally fine. We can see we have our app bar and has that hideous color. We'll change that. But the other thing you'll notice that we can do is instead of adding in this row scope here, because we want a little bit more flexibility, there's two ways to do this. First of all, is that in our top app bar, as it is, you can actually pass, just like we saw in our main screen, we saw in our scaffold, we have the top bar, and you can pass title and so forth. You can also do the same. So for our top app bar here, I can actually remove all of this and put inside there. So what I mean by that is as follows. If you start typing title, like this, you can see we have a way of passing a title as a parameter. And indeed, we can pass anything, in this case, in the form of a lambda. So in this case here, I can just go ahead and say something like this. Okay. Now, when that happens, if I'm passing as a parameter, then this is not going to work because we are already doing that by passing in as a trailing lambda. So I'm going to cut all of that. And then, and also that means I can get rid of all of that as well. Okay, that also means I can also go to actions. If you type actions like this, you can see we have another row scope like that, which is going to be for actions. And as you hover over, you can see there's other things we can pass as parameters. We can pass a navigation icon if you want to. We can pass a background color, content color, and so forth. Right? So in this case, if we wanted to pass a navigation icon, we're going to say navigation icon like that, and we pass it along as such. Okay? So this is actually a better way of constructing our top app bar. And of course, I'm going to pass the background color, and I can say the background color is going to be something different. Let's say color transparent like this. And I can continue. I can say, let's say elevation. I can pass the elevation that we're going to be passing along there. And there you have it. So this is way better, and I like this better because, as you see, it's easier to conceptualize and easier for us to see what's going on. All right, so there's our top app bar. So for the title, of course, I can go ahead and pass a text. In this case, that will say title, like we had passed there. Okay. Let's go ahead and run again. In fact, now it looks like we have a problem here because I made sure that our nav controller needs to also be passed along, I should say nav controller like this. Oops, say nav controller. Okay, let's go ahead and run. And there we go. You can see say hello empty, and it is transparent, of course, background. Now, one thing I want to do instead, because I am treating everything as different composables, notice the reason why we have this elevation to set up to 0 as default, but we can change that, right, when we call it. That means then for our elevation, I can go here and say elevation, and I want elevation to be 5.dp like this, and that will change, of course, elevation, as you will see in a minute here. Okay, you can see now the elevation is pretty much like what we have there. All right, so let's go ahead and look at adding these 3 action buttons there. So we know how to do that because go back to our weather app. You can see that we have that scaffolding per se of actions there that we can add. So again, we can pass anything we want here, any composable really. It's still a row, which is great. And in this case, let's go and add something. Now, because we know we are customizing this weather app to work in any screen really, we are going to use, for instance, this is main boolean here to check whether we are showing in main, and then if that's the case, then we're going to show those buttons. Otherwise, we're not going to show them. So to do so, we can put an if statement here, right? So I'm going to say if is main is true, we can just say is main like that. If that's true, then I'm going to create, in this case here, an icon button. And for this icon button here, inside, I'm going to create an icon, okay, like that. For image, I'm going to say icons dot, you can use default. I'm going to say search. I'm going to have this nice search icon there. Okay. For content, I'm just going to go ahead and say search icon like this. And then I'm going to also add another icon button. icons, you can say that rounded, and say more vertical. This will give us this more icon that user will know when clicked there's more to show. Very good. Let's go ahead and see if this is going to show anything. And voila, you can see there it is. We have those two icons showing there. Now, this is only if main is true, right? Meaning that we are on the main screen. We want to show this. Else, in this case here, all I'm going to do, I'm just going to pass in a box, an empty box, which means, you know, nothing really will show. That's fine. I'm going to go like this. And the next thing we do is, I know when we call this, we're just passing Helen AMT here. However, you notice that we have the weather object, right? So we can use that to our advantage, which means for our title here, I'm going to use this weather object and get the city title that we are trying to get the information about the weather for. So I'm going to say weather, go again and say city, and I want the city name. And I'm going to append a comma like this, and then add a little bit more because I want to be able to also say the country. That will have city object, we can get ID, a name, there it is, coordinates, which we don't care about at this point. But we want to get to the countries to get the, in this case, the country code. So we're going to use the same object. So weather, let's see, go to city and then get country like this. Now, if you run this, you can see it's going to say Portland, US, over there at the top. Voila, Portland, US, and I can put some space there. You can see that very nice space in between. Okay, very good. So it's working. Now, if we were to run this somewhere else or call this weather app in a different screen, we can then, of course, say something like, well, is main is false, in which case, then what would be called for actions, we're just going to be an empty box, which means nothing, none of these will show. It makes sense because all of these items, all of these icons, these action icons, we want to show them only if the users are on main screen. Anywhere else, we don't want that. Now let's look at the navigation icon. Let's go back to where we are, weather app. For our navigation icon, these navigation icons, let me show you so you can see what I mean. So this is what I mean. So we can add, in this case here, depending on where we are, we're going to add an icon that will represent a back arrow, depending again on the screen. So what I'm going to do is we can accommodate that by going to navigation icon. And of course, we're going to check. Remember, we are also passing this icon parameter, image vector, okay, which can be null. So we're going to check, right? Because if we are, when we call this weather app and we are passing an icon, that means this icon is not null, which means this navigation icon needs to be triggered to show something. So again, I'm going to say if icon, right, variable we're passing is not null. If that's the case, then we need to add an icon. So I'm going to say icon, and an image vector as such is going to be the icon we're passing, right? This icon there. We can pass a description. Actually, it looks like I got the wrong icon. Let's start over. Say icon. I want that first one there. Okay, very good. I'm going to pass icon. And this is going to, for now, I'm just going to add null. That's fine. And I'm going to add a little tint to this icon. Let's say material, theme, and say on secondary like this. And I'm going to pass a modifier. And I want to make this icon, of course, clickable. So I'm going to invoke the clickable function there. And in this case here, when that's clicked, we're going to invoke the on button clicked and then say invoke like this. We're going to just invoke this button click. What is that one? Well, this is what we added there. So the idea is that when that happens, we're going to pass it as a callback to whatever we are passing when we call this navigation icon. Okay. So if it's to go back or to go up or whatever it is that we want to do, then that will be passed along To see this in action, I will have to go to main, because remember, it's all contextual, which means in our app bar here, I can go ahead and say icon. Let's see, let's hover over to make sure where is that. It's after the title. So right there, I'm going to say icon. I'm going to set it equal to an icon. I'm going to say icons, default, say arrow back, like this. Because icon is not null, that means then this will run and we're going to have something in our navigation icon. Where do I get that callback, right? When that's clicked, I want to be able to do something. Now, if we go back to our weather app, you could see that on button clicked is the last function or parameter function in this case that is called, which means we can use a trailing lambda. What that means is that I can just go ahead at the end of weather app there. I can just put trailing lambda like this. We don't pass anything. That means here I can say log D. In this case, I'm going to say button clicked. Like that. Just put that inside of there. That's good. So at this point here, if I run this, we're going to see in a back arrow, hopefully a message such as this. Okay, there it is. You can see. There we go. I click. Let's go to our logcat. There we go. Looks like our logcat is not really being responsive. Sometimes happens. What you need to do is restart the entire Android Studio, but it's okay. We can go to run and we can see that the click button also is showing there. So whenever your logcat is not working, if you go to the run tab, usually you get the same functionality. Very good. So it's indeed working. Obviously, this is not what we want. I'm just showing you how this would look if we were to actually add that icon, right? So later we'll see all that in action. And so what I'm going to do now in our main screen here, I'm going to say that I don't want this icon at all because that's not the deal. I don't want to have an icon there. So I'm going to rerun this. And we're just going to see Portland, US, and that. One thing I'm also going to do, looks like that is too large. Let's go back to our weather there and change the size of our title. Okay, let's go here. Let's start by changing the color to material, theme. Colors on secondary, that's fine, and let's give it a style. I want font weight to be bold, of course, and font size to be about 15.sb. Okay, let's see. All right, looks much better. I like that. So now that we have our app bar looking decent, as you see there, we are going to move on and look at the actual body of our scaffold, right? So we know. So now we're going to go and look at all of this. Of course, we're going to come back when we need and add more, or at least restructure everything here. But that's fine. At least we have the basis, which is important because we can reuse it as many times as we need.